Hi everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us in our 2024 Government Contracting Summer Shorts Complimentary Webinar Series. Okay, first a bit about Jennifer Schaus and Associates. We are based in downtown Washington, D.C. with a focus on advising established federal contractors. Our clients are companies who sell products, services, or software to the federal government and range from large businesses to mid-sized firms with millions in federal contracts. Separate from our consulting services, we have amassed a subscriber base of almost 35,000 in our weekly newsletter, The Federal Contractor Weekly. We offer advertising opportunities in the newsletter, including sponsored content newsletters and webinars. If you are interested in reaching federal contractors, please email us and ask for a media kit. And now a bit about this series. As always, our webinars are complimentary and recorded. You can find all of our recordings on our YouTube channel simply by subscribing to it using the link you see on the screen. There is no cost. You can find all of our PowerPoints on the slideshare.net site using your LinkedIn credentials to log in. Again, there is no cost. You can find the links to register for this series on our website, jenniferschaus.com, under the Webinars tab. There is a separate registration link for each webinar. Now more details about the series. We will be running this webinar series every day at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We started the series on Monday, August 12th, and it will conclude this Friday, August 23rd. Our guest speakers cover various GovCon topics and will focus on the areas, best practices, common pitfalls, and FAQs. At the end of each webinar, we will open up the floor to questions. Please type them into the control panel and I will read them in the order they are received. They will be read anonymously. Here's a glimpse of our speakers, leading ladies in federal contracting. Each speaker covers a hot topic in federal contracting. And here are more images of the ladies you heard from last week and you will hear from this week. Again, please remember you can find the full schedule and also the recordings, including those from last week, on our website under the tab Webinars. For all of our 700 plus webinars, please hop over to our complimentary YouTube channel. Our webinars are complimentary thanks to our longtime in-kind sponsors. We would like to thank our friends at GovEvents, the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our webinars and our events on govevents.com, as well as recordings from our past 700 plus webinars. We also want to thank Tom Johnson and his team at Set Aside Alert, the go-to publication for contracting opportunities for small, women-owned, veteran-owned, HubZone, and 8A firms. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. Also, Fairfax County Economic Development Group is a great resource for businesses in Northern Virginia. Please visit their calendar to learn about events and trainings, including this webinar series. Now I want to tell you about our complimentary webinar series on Big Tech in the federal government. Please join us this fall for our Big Tech webinar series. This series will run every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find the registration links on our website under Big Tech. As always, these webinars are complimentary and recorded. We will cover the top 15 big tech companies who sell to the U.S. federal government. This includes household names like Amazon, Facebook, X, Salesforce, and more. We will dig into the data to look at lobbying dollars spent, their special interest, stock price, and how that intersects with their federal contracts. We will dissect their civilian versus defense contracts, as well as contract vehicle dollars to include GWACs and GSA schedules. We will also look at their subcontracting dollars. And a big thank you to our sponsors on the program, C3 Integrated Solutions and FedBiz Access. Don't miss out, this series is offering a unique sponsorship opportunity. We have heavily discounted this series to a rate of $1,500. This covers the entire series. Sponsor benefits include registration list, ample promo in our newsletter and LinkedIn, and you will also get a sponsor side with a 100-word or less write-up about your business. If you are interested, please click on the sponsor link to place your order or send us an email to hello@jenniferschaus.com if you have any questions. The Virginia Apex Accelerator at George Mason University offers free one-on-one counseling to established government contracting firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. If you are interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore their services, review homework recommendations, register for live training, and find useful links to agencies and other self-directed learning. One-on-one counseling is limited to eligible client companies. Appointment requests are handled in the order they were received and based on counselor availability due to high demand. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. Now let's meet today's speaker. Please welcome Judy Bratt from Summit Insight to the webinar. Today, she will cover the topic of business development. Judy, we're so excited to hear your presentation. I will put myself on mute and turn the floor over to you. Please let me know when you would like to advance to the next slide.
I'm ready for the first slide. Bring it on. Welcome and thank you so much for having me for our topics with 5 best practices, 5 common pitfalls, and 5 FAQs. in federal business development. So my next slide, give me the first one. There we go. My top federal business development practice is focus. The most successful companies set a tight focus on the 2 to 3 federal agencies where they're confident they can be the most successful. If you're not sure how to focus with confidence, use these 3 factors: past performance, contract award data, and relationships. Factor 1, past performance, for 2 reasons. First, federal buyers who are new to you are some of the most risk-averse life forms on the planet. They want to know that you've solved their problem for someone who looks just like them yesterday afternoon. The more past performance you can show them with similar size and scope to their needs, the lower the risk and the greater their confidence that you're the safe choice. Second, organic growth is your least expensive approach to new wins. Be more profitable by expanding and winning recompetes from customers who already know you and love you. They pay you on time, they come back for more, they send their friends, they know when your birthday is, those people. Factor 2, past federal contract data, and it's free. SAM.gov contract data or USA spending show you who buys what you do, how they buy, how much they buy, and who they're buying from, so you can spend your time on people with money. Factor 3 is relationships, which actually takes me to best practice number 2. Next slide, please. Ever notice that successful GovCons have so many relationships in the account long before the solicitation hits the street? That's because they put top capture priority on the accounts where they not only know the most people, but where they have the right mix of strong relationships. Best practice number 2, my players and layers methodology, PALM, lets you know who you know, shows you who you don't know, but the data shows you need to know, and gives you a methodical, systematic way to close those gaps. In short, there are players in 5 roles, or what I call layers, who affect whether you win or lose in every federal agency where you want to win work. Here they are. Get ready to write them down. Here we go. Small business specialist, contracting layer, the end user layer, the industry layer, and the stakeholder layer. Winning GovCons, find them and get them all on side long before the competition formally begins. You can get the details on how you can do the same in the complimentary GovCon Personas Guide, which comes with free lessons and tips on my website, GrowFedBiz, under the Resources tab. And I'm happy to answer questions about the players at all 5 layers. Right now, drop them in the chat. Next slide, please. So let's say you've picked the 3 agencies where you're going to focus. You've researched the players at all the layers. Now you need to get their attention and get them to return your calls. Enter best practice number 3, connection based on best values. Your best values as a company are the 3 or 4 differentiators that are ideally quantifiable and objectively verifiable and represent source selection criteria that a buyer might include when they want to meet their goals, maximize project success, and minimize risk. So, what could they be for your company? Big picture, think about things like number of years in business, experience and education of key staff, low turnover, number of recent projects of a similar size and scope, especially in that agency or a similar agency, number or percentage of outstanding or exceptional ratings in the Contractor Performance Assessment Rating System, CPARS. Then map those best values to the players at each layer in that specific account. For example, small business specialists might get excited to meet an 8A service-disabled woman veteran-owned business in a hub zone. Your end user says they want innovation, but they got right back to you when you cited recent past performance of a similar size and scope. The contracting officer already said in the solicitation that they only want to work with suppliers who are on the contract vehicle they plan to use. See how it works? When you're trying to get through, emphasize the differentiator or best value that appeals most strongly to the person based on their responsibilities in that agency. Next slide, please. So now let's say you've broken through. You've established two-way communication with your players at all the layers. But imagine now there's 8 months till the solicitation is released. How can you stay top of mind? Keep in touch, keep your shine on without being annoying from first contact all the way to solicitation day. Best practice number 4 is micro engagement momentum. Not micro purchase, micro engagement. Here's how it works. Our brains generate the feel-good chemical, dopamine, in response to experiences that help us thrive. That neurochemical reward system makes us seek more of those experiences. Now, here's the cool thing. The wave of dopamine we get from an everyday victory like, found my car keys, is almost as strong as the hit we get from a big achievement like graduated from law school or won a big contract. Ever have a small positive experience that shifts your whole day for the better? The same thing happens for your very, very human federal buyers because they're just as human as you are. I promise. Micro engagement is what you get when every time somebody connects with you, they feel great because you create a positive experience for them. Maybe it's simply the upbeat tone in your voicemail, or the moment you ask them how the family they talked about on the last call is doing with your recent move. Maybe it's the link you sent to them about that conference they hadn't heard about. Little moves like that add up so that yours becomes the call they'll return once you start making those making those calls. So next slide. Consistency, which is the heart of best practice number 5. There's no such thing as doing business with the government. The government doesn't sign your contract. A real person does. People do business with people they know and like and trust. Successful GovCons discover how to build trust with their federal buyers long before money has changed hands. How do they do it? Research shows that consistency, demonstrated in part by reliability, is one of the 7 elements of trust. Do you do what you're going to say? Do you do what you say you're going to do every time? Did you find out how your federal buyer likes to hear from you? Phone, text, email, office visit, and how often? How well did you honor that wish? As somebody with an ADHD brain, me, consistency is a best practice I find especially challenging. I start out with great intentions, but then I get distracted and, oh, squirrel. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. The solution is to build personalized micro-engagement contact cadences into your business development plan for each person who's important to your federal goals. Is this a ton of work? Yeah, it is, especially at first, which takes us back to best practice number 1. It's feasible to do that when you focus, and it gets easier as you learn what works with your specific players at every layer. Next slide, please. On to pitfalls. Federal BD pitfall number 1 is asking, what can I bid? Instead of, who is my buyer? To go forward, look back. 80% of GovCons in the federal arena suffer from what I call opportunity illusion. Now more than ever, we are awash in thousands of solicitations a day. Federal contract spending is at an all-time high that topped $756 billion last year. So why, if you thought that number of contractors winning would be growing, you'd be wrong. Between 2016 and 2022 alone, DoD lost 43% of its small suppliers. A 2018 study by the Center for Strategic and International Studies showed that 40% of new entrants exit the federal market after 3 years. 50 to 60% leave after 5 years. If you keep looking at the daily surge of solicitations asking, what can I bid? You're surfing a wave that's taking you to the exits. Only about 20% of new entrants remain beyond 5 years. How do they do it? What's their secret? This 20% have learned to stop asking, what can I bid? And shift their focus to a point much earlier in the acquisition cycle. They take time to look at past federal contract awards. Why? Because people do business with people. If you have the ability to turn contract data into intelligence, you can see who your buyers are, how they buy, the vehicles piece, who and what they already like, how much they spend, and where they are. And that gets you on track for best practice number 1, which was focus. Next slide, please. Pitfall number 2 is all about how you use 5 little words. Full credit to my wise friend and career acquisition professional, William Randolph, for this tip. He taught me that a common pitfall is asking your federal buyer, how can I help you? When you do that, William says, you're giving them homework. They already have a full plate, and now you're asking them to figure out where you fit. Right on, William. Little wonder that's not a call they return in a hurry. Good news here. The fix is super simple. Instead of asking, how can I help you? Start those conversations and voicemails and emails with how I can help you. Offer 2 to 3 or even just one thoughtful idea that your research has shown they might value based on their mission, their responsibilities, recent contract awards, contracts expiring, news items, social media. If you were in their shoes, what might be important to you right now? Even if you guess wrong, a voicemail or an email that shows you tried is going to increase your chances of getting through and beginning engagement. Part of the best practices we've just talked about. Next slide, please. Pitfall number 3 is the hired gun versus full team engagement. I'll always remember the sobering observation that service-disabled veteran-owned small business owner Angel Diaz, CEO of Allegiant Defense, shared with me. He said, I've spent over $1 million over the years on business development professionals. You know who the only person was who ever brought in any business? Me. I can't imagine the painful stories behind that experience, but I do know that Angel is not alone. I've rarely heard from a company who brought in a putative expert in federal business development, parachuted them in, and that person knows nothing about your company, but seems to know lots of people. Or somebody who's just come out of a senior position in a federal agency, but has never done sales. Or someone who has spent most of their career doing business development for a large prime contractor in your niche, but hasn't worked for a company your size. Avoid this pitfall by keeping 2 things in mind. First, a little like when your flight attendant says your nearest exit may be behind you, your best prospect for a new lead business developer may be right in front of you. This may be the subject matter expert who's great at what they do. They speak your customer's language. Your customers love them. They're courageous. They love talking to people. And they're telling you, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. I want more responsibility. You can't teach courage, but your investment in teaching this person how to step into a BD role, bringing all their subject matter experience with them, will be far lower and far more likely to succeed than parachuting somebody in who knows nothing about your company or your clients. Now, I will say there are some great BD experts out there, and in fact, one of the other presenters on this series, Chelsea Meggett, is one of the country's top experts in offering this kind of service. You want to make sure you've checked their references, asked them their track record in working with products or services like yours and winning work in agencies that are your targets. Second, federal business development isn't just a relationship game, it's also a team sport. And by that, I don't mean teaming with partners on outside partners on bids, but the team you build inside your company. Everybody's in sales. Everybody whose responsibilities touch the customer, from the C-suite right down to the frontline subject matter experts and the back office support, has a role to play in growing the business, even if and when you bring in an outside resource. What gets measured gets done. Build business development metrics into everybody's key performance indicators. Next slide, please. Pitfall number 4, failure to focus on the client's goals. Put positively, to quote author and global sales expert Zig Zigfield, you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. The great thing about most GovCons is that so many of us founded our companies because we start out as passionate subject matter experts. We are really good at what we do, and if only someone will hire us, we can change the world for the better in amazing ways. And then we get tunnel vision about if only someone would hire us part and lose faith in the enduring power of focusing on our customers' goals. If you want to do business with public servants, then focus on how you can help them provide superlative public service. The ways that your innovation, your past performance, your response time, the unique features of your products and services contribute to the mission, the goals, and the milestones that keep your customers awake at night. Avoiding this pitfall relates directly to best practice number 3. For each person that you're calling on, Focus on the best values that can contribute the most to making them look like a rock star. Even if you got behind on your research for a call or a meeting, you can always fall back on asking yourself three things. How am I helping them follow the rules? Make it easy and make them look good. Next slide, please. Expecting teaming partners to feed you. Big pitfall. Remember the 80% of those vendors who leave the federal market within 5 years of entering? Far too many of them say things like, my strategy is to get my experience by subcontracting to the primes. They follow all the instructions, fill out all the portals, go to endless supplier conferences and matchmakers, and then crickets. Or, and this can be the most heartbreaking, companies invest thousands of dollars and months of time negotiating teaming agreements, contributing expertise and precious time to the proposal itself. The prime wants and even needs to show their commitment to small business by having you on the team. Your team wins, and they get no work at all. Here's how to break the cycle. Bring business. The most productive teaming is often a two-sided sell. The subcontractor who has invested time and money to win the hearts and minds of the federal buyer will find it very easy to get the attention of the federal partner. That conversation starts a lot like this. Hey, we've just come from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, and they say they're going to die if they don't have us there. They're going to spec our expertise on the coming recompete. Want to talk? Oh, and P.S., make sure you engage experienced legal counsel up front to negotiate a teaming agreement that includes provisions about work share and each party's accountabilities and responsibilities to ensure the outcome you expect. On to FAQs. Ready? Next slides. First FAQ. Why don't federal buyers return my calls? This is one of my favorite questions. My answers come right from a former contracting officer who's now a senior acquisition professional in a federal agency. Here's what she told me. The first reason I don't do that is because I don't need what you do. So if you or somebody you're paying precious dollars to is just mindlessly dialing for dollars, do not do that. The second reason is I don't need what you do right now. And how can you tell the difference? Back to best practice number one, focus and research past federal contract data. Third reason they don't return calls. I'm working on a solicitation related to what you do, and if I talk to you, I might leave myself open to protest. I'm not taking that risk. The fourth reason she gave me? Mean voicemails. I was shocked. I said to her, seriously, who would leave a mean voicemail? What does that even sound like? She said, it sounds like this. Hey, it's Pete. I'm sure you're busy, but I really need an answer from you. Call me. And then there's the fifth one, which most people forget. I just haven't gotten to you yet. I sure hope you don't give up because I really do need what you do and I just haven't had time. So I hope you don't give up on me. Did you know? Professional call teams say it can take between 15 to 30 attempts to get through to people these days. So if you give up after 2 or 3 tries, that business is going to your competitor who persisted. That takes me to FAQ number 2. What's a pro tactic to get through to the right people? My favorite tactic is one used by professional call teams. It's called double tap. Here's how it works. Fully expect to get voicemail when you call. You've got your basic call script ready and have added specific notes about how you're going to personalize that. And you have a follow-up email all ready to send as well. For instance, hey Charles, sorry I missed you. It's Kate from Absolutely Perfect Staffing, the ones with the 95% success rate in placing cleared application developers. Check your email for details about 3 ways I can help you. If I don't hear from you by Wednesday, I'll try you again Thursday morning. I'm at 555-1212. Again, that's 555-1212. Kate hangs up, sends that email right away, and makes a note to call Charles Thursday morning. Charles notices Kate's very specific promises and checks, yeah, that email's right where she said it would be. He thinks, she did what she said she'd do once. That does sound like somebody who could help, but I got a zillion things to do today. Let's see if she calls back Thursday. Kate calls back Thursday, gets voicemail, leaves another cheery message because she's done her homework. She knows Charles needs what she does and does indeed have 3 ideas for how to help him. This time, her message mentions Absolutely Perfect's 20-year track record in his agency, and her double tap email includes a case study from his agency. Charles smiles. He knows Kate's not going away anytime soon, and every time she calls or writes, it's about something that matters to him. He puts her on the top of his call list for next week. This doesn't go on forever, even if you have to do 5 or 6 cycles of it, because most of your competition has already given up by the 4th try. This is about more than the tone and message that you leave in your voicemail or the text of your email. Double tap works because each cycle gives that contact two experiences that have built their trust and their impression of your reliability before they ever talk to you. Your actions told them, I'm a reliable person you can count on. I do what I say I'm going to do. You stay out ahead of your competition simply because you do what you say you're going to do. Let's get to the next one. What are the easiest opportunities to win? 2 words: organic growth. Someone who's already done business with you is 12 times more likely to buy from you again than someone who has never heard of you. Imagine how easy this might be. You know the players at all the layers in that account. You have outstanding or exceptional CPARs. Your people are working side by side with your customer every day. Your customer is talking every day about wishes, problems, owies that you could help them solve. Are you listening? Those conversations are filled with opportunities lying around in plain sight, things your competition doesn't see or hear. When I worked with RMA Federal, and they trained and tasked on-site subject matter experts and program managers to share that expertise and intelligence with the BD team, they identified over $30 million in opportunities that no one had ever talked about. And they did it in a conversation that took less than 30 minutes. When you're working through an existing contract vehicle like RMA was, and the end user has money and a defined requirement, the contracting shop has some easy options to modify or extend your current contract instead of putting a new requirement on the street. In short, don't wait, create. Next FAQ, which layers should be my priority for developing relationships? Great question. Recap, the layers are contracting, end users, small business specialists, industry, and stakeholder. Your top priority are the first 4. That's because the stakeholder, like the CIO, the base commander, the cabinet secretary, is so high up in the food chain, they're not in the room when you get chosen, but the buck stops with them. They're the ones whose resignation will be on the front page of the Washington Post below the fold if your performance makes their agency look bad. About the other 4, I bow to the advice of my longtime buddy and climbing partner, Anna Ehrman. She has been in all these layers over the past 20 years. On my recent webinar, How to Find the Right Federal Buyers, which you can find the replay on demand on my website, she recommends starting with industry, primes and competimates large and small. You should already know who they are in the data you've analyzed to identify who needs what you do, and you probably have relationships with them already. Second layer, end users. That gets you focused not just on the titles of people who need what you do, but on how what you offer fits what they need and what problem you're going to be solving for them. The more complex those needs, the more people you're going to need to enlist, the more detail you need, and the more time it will take. Start by researching people in your prospect agency's office who hold the typical job titles of people who need and buy what you do. Who has a problem you can solve? Dig in and really get to know those people before you call on them. You can learn how to tap 5, actually even 6, free intelligence sources to do that in my webinar, 5 federal lead sources you need to know. Some agencies, for example, HHS, have awesome employee directories. Veterans Affairs, honestly, not so much. Increase your BD efficiency by giving top priority to industry associations, industry organizations where your end users routinely gather with your federal customers. The Society of American Military Engineers, the Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association, the National Defense Industries Association are all great examples. Give top priorities to national organizations that have a local chapter you can join. But be sure to look for who's doing great work in your own neighborhood. For example, for over 20 years, I rarely looked beyond the bright lights of Northern Virginia. When I moved to the wilds of Southern Maryland, close to Patuxent River Naval Air Station, that all became a much longer drive away. In my new neighborhood, I discovered that Pamela Menor leads the Southern Maryland Minority Chamber of Commerce, a dynamic team that brings together government buyers with business owners in Calvert County, St. Mary's County, Charles County, and Prince George's County. Third layer, small business specialists. Even if you decide to call them first, the more research you've done, the more useful they're going to be. They can provide novice researchers with an early sense of momentum because they're easy to find and have longer but not unlimited patience and lower risk thresholds than some of the other players and layers, and also be a feel-good safety net who can provide some support even if they get frustrated and lost. The more specific you are, the more they can help, the better they can direct you. Make it easy for them to cut and paste an intro by using text they can forward to someone else. Anna says, if your end user prospect loves you but has no idea how to do business with you, introduce your buyer to the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, and they'll help the end user figure it out. You notice contracting comes forth. Our GovCon Personas guide explains why, but real quick, while the contracting layer runs the acquisition process and has signing authority, the end user layer is where the requirement gets defined and the contract is performed. Till the end user has a requirement, calling on the contracting shop can be fruitless for you and pesky for them. Last slide. How can I make it easy for them to award work to us? First, avoid what's not easy for them. Sole source, also known as other than full and open competition. Sole source is a ton of work for your federal buyer, even if you think that would be nice and easy for you. Instead, become a master of FAR Part 13, Simplified Acquisition. Set up for success with the next best thing to sole source, micro purchase. For every them you'd like to serve, before you call on them, brainstorm at least three ideas for ways you could solve a problem or help them out for a budget of less than $10,000. In normal situations, a federal buyer with purchasing authority can award a contract to you with minimal consideration of other suppliers to provide products or services worth up to $10,000, pay you with the government purchase card as quickly as 24 hours. And you know what you have besides $9,999 in your bank account? You have past performance. Past performance begets future wins. And if you're helping them with requirements in disaster response, that micro purchase can be worth as much as $20,000. Micro purchase isn't just for novices. It's a savvy company strategy to build trust with any federal buyer who's new to you. Established companies always have some micro purchase options in their back pockets. You can get all kinds of details about regulations as well as ideas for developing irresistible offers in 2 on-demand webinars on my website, Mighty Micro Purchase, Sole Source Superpower, and Small Buys, Big Impact, Micro Purchase Strategies for Established Companies. Third, do that same exercise, 3 easy solutions that you could offer that person if their budget is just under $250,000. Remembering again that in times of disaster response, they can award a contract worth up to $750,000 by using simplified acquisition rules and procedures. It's not quite as simple as making 3 phone calls and awarding the work to you. Contracting officers have a lot of flexibility and discretion as well as responsibility. But bottom line, these are relationship sales. By the time you see one of these things posted in sam.gov, especially in 4th quarter, somebody's probably been there before you. So make it your business to get there first. How'd we do, Emma?
Awesome. We will now move on to some questions. Please go ahead and type them into the control bar, and I will start by reading out the first one.
Oh, good.
Can you please state the names of the positions of 5 layers again?
Okay, get your pens out. Here we go. Small business specialist. The small business specialist, and you can find them in just about every federal department and agency. They are there to help you navigate. But the more work you've done, the more helpful they can be. And they 99.999% of the time don't have signing authority. They're not your buyer. Too many people have a stack of small business specialists, but they don't have a lot of contacts at the other layers. So small business specialist, first layer. Second layer, the contracting shop. That includes the contracting specialist, who is the assistant to the contracting officer, helps sort out the proposals, dot the I's, cross the T's, but doesn't have signing authority, and the contracting officer, who has a power that the President of the United States does not have, and that's the power to legally bind your company to these United States in an agreement to provide products and services. So small business specialist, contracting. Third layer, end user layer. These are the ones that we all need to know so many more of. These are the people who are stuck with the everyday consequences of choosing you. And these folks they're the titles of the people you work with every day. Maybe it's project engineer or helpline supervisor. Maybe it's the warrior in the battle space. You want to have a deep lot of end users and meet with them long before the solicitations come out, because they'll tell you a lot about what they like and what they don't like. And that goes all the way up to program managers and people who are managing lots of budgets, and a special person in the end user layer who speaks contracting, but is actually called a contracting officer's representative. And that person translates user requirements into the contracting language and turns it over to the team that's actually running the acquisition. So, small business specialist, contracting, end user, next layers, industry. That can be the incumbent, prime, large or small, and competition that's nipping at your heels. Don't think so much competitors as competimates. It's very rare that one person is always your opponent. Often people are both competitors and partners. And the last layer is stakeholder. And in my model, stakeholder, they are the cabinet secretary or the CIO or the base commander. They are not the one that's in the room when you get chosen, but they are the one that's signing off on the strategic plan. They are setting the direction and the priorities and the mission. So, total recap in summary: small business specialist, contracting, end users, industry, and stakeholder.
Okay, we have another question. If I heard correctly, you mentioned 3 spending thresholds: 10K, 250K, and 750K. Could you describe where the 250K threshold is important?
Sure, and there's actually fourth. So the everything that the details on everything I'm about to say are in Federal Acquisition Regulation Subpart 13. Part 13, which is all about simplified acquisition, includes micro purchase, which is a subset of simplified acquisition. In normal operation time, a federal buyer can award a contract worth up to $10,000, or in the case of a disaster response situation, up to $20,000 with very little effort or documentation or justification. And there's also no small business set-asides or preferences under $10,000. There's also no Buy American Act under $10,000. If the purchase is worth more than $10,000 but less than $250,000, the federal buyer the contracting shop has a lot of flexibility and options. They can award a contract for products or services worth up to $250,000, following certain rules, including looking at whether or not there are other contracts in place or other ways to do business that they have that they could possibly use. But they're supposed to consider small businesses first for simplified acquisitions worth up to $250,000 in normal operations time. For what's called contingency response or contingency operations or disaster response, they can use these simplified acquisition rules for purchases. It can be worth as much as $750,000, and for purchases of some products or services, actually the threshold can be much higher. But you need to go back and spend a couple of hours just going through the Federal Acquisition Regulation Part 13, realize how complex it is, and don't expect to have figured it out by yourself, but that can be a springboard for conversation with your end users, with the contracting shop, and with the small business specialists to say, hey, I've been reading about this. My goodness, you're really managing some complex stuff here. How does this work in your shop? How do you do it in your office?
Okay, another question. How do I get a CPARS without troubling the CO?
Your contracting officer has the responsibility to complete your rating if you are a prime contractor. The primes are supposed to be having the ability to provide CPARs for subs. That doesn't always happen, but it shouldn't be an imposition. Some of it, if you first of all make sure you've logged in and see whether or not the contracting officer has completed your CPARs. If they have not, and it's not the last 3 weeks of the fiscal year, time your request politely. And if they've just checked the box and said, well, you performed okay, well, you want to have negotiated up front, had the conversation up front with both your end user and your contracting shop. Hey, we aim to always be exceptional. What would exceptional look like? So you always know what you're shooting for. If they haven't completed it, you can ask politely and not in a big fat hurry and say it right all the way along. We aim to be exceptional. So we're looking forward to performing in a way that lets you give us the top rating. So ask the question, ask politely, and remember they're humans. They got a lot of things that are on the go. You can say, hey, we are submitting a proposal for something else, and we need to submit our up-to-date CPARs, and we'd love to be able to tell people about the work that we've done for you. But be polite, have lots of lead time, and failure to plan on your part does not constitute an emergency on their part. Okay, you don't really want to have, sometimes you might be able to ask the small business specialist if they could give you some support or do a little nudge. So they, again, if you have gotten the small business specialist on your side months and weeks and months ahead of time, that's going to go better than, hi, you've never heard of me, you're the small business specialist, you're supposed to help me, could you please get the contracting officer to fill out the CPARs? That's not going to go so well. Make lots of friends and make them ahead of time. As well, if the contracting officer turns out to need input from the end user, again, get everybody on board and make sure they know that you are there not just to provide superlative performance and comply with all your contract terms and conditions, but you also want to make sure that you've given them everything they need so that they can get your CPARs done in plenty of time.
Okay, awesome answer, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking today. If you have any questions for our speaker, please contact her using the information you see on the screen. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Today's webinar can be found on our YouTube channel within 24 hours, and the slides as mentioned are always on our SlideShare site. And a friendly reminder, our Big Tech and Federal Contracting webinar series kicks off this fall, 15 webinars, 15 Wednesdays. All webinars are free to attend. Take advantage of our heavily discounted sponsor rates to get in front of federal contractors, obtain registration lists, and share a consistent message over the course of 15 webinars. Again, thank you for attending. Catch today's replay on YouTube, and if you are currently watching the YouTube video, please leave us a comment or like the video and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Judy.